Welcome back to another edition of Alaska Weather Facts. I'm meteorologist Dave Snyder. As you well know, you can get forecast information for any day of the week. Today, tonight, tomorrow, out to 6 or 7 days. It includes the high and low temperature, the wind direction, the chance of rain or snow in your part of Alaska. But did you know that there is information available to forecast out to 2 weeks? So the question is, how would you use that information? And here to answer that question today and tell us a lot more about climate services from the U.S. National Weather Service Alaska region is Rick Thoman. He's the program manager for the Climate Science and Services. And Rick, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, Dave.
How would we use information that is out to 2 weeks instead of just the high and low and the chance of rain?
Well, Dave, as we move out in time, of course, forecasts become more uncertain. So as we move into that second week from now, we're not looking at specific highs or lows or precipitation amounts at any given place. What we can do with the state of the science at this point is get a handle on patterns. So we can say things like increased chances for stormy weather in the Bering Sea in 2 weeks, or we've been in a cold weather pattern, looks like 8 to 10 days from now, that pattern's going to change. Those are the kind of forecasts that we can currently make in that second week.
So you're increasing lead time for perhaps big or small weather events and telling us the likelihood of maybe more coastal storms or wind events in some areas?
Those are the kinds of things that that we hope to be able to let Alaskans know in the second week forecast. And if you have an activity or an event that you would find that kind of advance notice useful, whether it's moving stuff off of the beach, whether to go out hunting or to come back from camp, those kind of decisions, the week 2 provides the opportunity for you to get a handle on that kind of information.
Okay. What other type of weather impacts that we're familiar with might Alaskans use climate services for?
Well, in the forecast realm, we can go provide some information from this week 2, say the 8 to 14 day period, on out to the monthly and even seasonal time scale. Now, those monthly seasonal forecasts are still kind of just really very much pattern dependent, and the amount of detail that we can provide at this point is still pretty limited. Generally, indications of how temperature and precipitation will fall in maybe above normal, below normal kind of range. But in the week 2 period, we can be considerably more specific than that as far as the general patterns and really the impacts on Alaskans.
Okay, so we would be talking about generalizations there that would tell us that the period might be more stormy, might be more hot, more dry, more cold, and situations like that.
That's correct. So we're not going to be able to say in which community, for instance, there's the threat of coastal flooding, but we can often be able to tell we're moving into a pattern that would be conducive to big Bering Sea storms. So if you're in an area that could potentially impact you, you'll want to pay attention to the weather forecast.
Okay. Now, every day and every hour of the day, the National Weather Service is working on a forecast for the next day. But how do you start your forecast process for that extended period that goes out beyond 7 days?
Well, the way things work right now, we start off with the expected general flow pattern for Alaska and the whole world, really, and then we narrow that down to Alaska. So we start off with the basic computer model forecast. There's quite a few different computer models that we look at, bring those together. And then another important part of that is we attempt to assess the confidence. The reality is often 2 weeks away, the computer models are very divergent. They have lots of different solutions, and that's an indication that we don't have much confidence. But when we see more agreement in that time frame, and when that agreement is a pattern that will be potentially very impactful for Alaska or is a big change from what we've been in, that's when we can then take that expected pattern. We have computer models forecasting it. We've assessed the confidence. Now we can move that forward. How, using our experience as Alaskan weather forecasters, how does that typically play out for Alaska? So is this a stormy pattern for the Bering Sea? Is this an extra rainy period for Southeast? Is this the kind of pattern that generates strong winds potentially in the Anchorage Bowl? Is this a deep cold pattern for the interior? All of those are the kind of things that we're looking at in these large-scale patterns. That's very different than telling you that the winds on 10 days from now are going to be gusting to 120 on the hillside. We're looking for patterns, not the very specific information that the Weather Service will then hone in on as the event gets closer.
So the idea is to keep the 5, 6, 7-day forecast the same, where you are getting the standard high and low temperature and the chance of wind or rain, but further out you get a broad general forecast, but as the time gets closer to that event, we'll get a lot more specific.
That's correct.
Okay, very good. So how can people use this information if I am out in the bush and I want to see, is a coastal storm expected in my region, or is a chance for that improving over the next 2 to 3 weeks? Where could I go to get information like that?
When we see that potentially impactful or a big change in the weather is coming 8 to 14 days out, typically we will start to highlight that on the Weather Service Facebook site. We might produce a YouTube video highlighting that, linking that on our Facebook site. So often we don't, at this point, we don't have much to say in that because we're really looking for those forecasts of opportunities. But one thing we can say very likely as we go through the next 2 or 3 years, there'll be more and more of this kind of forecast information available in that week 2 time frame.
Okay, and something that emergency managers and city planners and folks in villages might be interested in keeping an eye out for, looking for that information to be headlined, whether that's on social media or perhaps through the National Weather Service channels there to get information from you to make better plans a little bit longer term and make better preparations in the event that things become a little bit more unsettled.
Absolutely. Climate Services with the National Weather Service Alaska region is talking to the state of Alaska every week, apprising them of that 2-week outlook, and on the social media side, we are working to keep Alaskans informed so that when we think we have some confidence in a high impact or a big change, that's the best way right now for folks to find out about that. Twitter, Facebook, so stay tuned to your National Weather Service.
Very good, a developing program. Rick Thoman with the National Weather Service Alaska region. He's the Climate Science and Services Program Manager. Thanks so much for joining us again, Rick, and I hope to have you back again soon.
Great, thanks Dave.
For another edition of Alaska Weather Facts, I'm meteorologist Dave Snyder. We'll see you next time.